Right, going to look at a new frame today. This is the Geprc Mark 4, and this is the cheapest frame I've looked at, freestyle frame I've looked at in a long time actually. I think this retails about 40 odd quid, and this has been catching my eye for a little bit because it reminded me very much of the reasons why I love my beloved Petit Soldat SX218, this really sort of slender body and arms. So I was going to get this from Unmantech in the UK, but every time I've checked they haven't had any stock, so I asked Banggood to send me one, and thankfully they did, and this thing arrived in 3 days, which is incredible. I don't know what's going on there, but anyway, what we've got is a 5-inch freestyle frame, and as you can see we've got this very slender profile, and here is my rather battered SX218, which also shares this very slender top plate. The top and bottom plate are 2.5mm. The arms, as you can see, are very slender, but they're 5mm. Camera plates are 2.5mm, and on the bottom we've got these two additional small plates which also appear to be 2.5mm, which are essentially acting as front and back bumpers. So you've essentially got 5mm of carbon here and here, and obviously the whole thing's sandwiched together with 8 aluminium standoffs. There's lots of sort of nice design touches on this, which means that Gep have been paying attention. So obviously we've got countersunk screws on top so your battery doesn't snag. Interestingly, we've got countersunk screws at the front. Don't really see the point of that, but one of the reasons why they may be there is because this frame can be built so it can fly basically inverted in a sort of neutral. And if I take the top plate off, the arm design is rather nice. Right, so I've taken off the top plate to expose the insides a little bit better, and basically these arms are obviously all replaceable, but the front of them meets in the middle, and there's a little U-shaped brace plate which goes over the top at either end, and obviously you've got 2 bolts or 2 screws per arm, one of which goes into a press nut which you have to put in yourself, but is really easy to do. Just use a pair of pliers, put a bit of a tea towel or something on one side of the carbon to protect it, and then just clamp down on your pliers onto the press nut. But essentially this little plate beefs up the area where it joins the body, so essentially you've got sort of 7.5mm at that point, and even though we're only using 2 bolts or 2 screws, there isn't any wiggle because of the way these arms join in the middle, and obviously it's the same at the back. And you'll notice, or you may notice, that the flight controller 30mm mounts or countersunk, and the reason for that, if I can find one, is because in the kit you get some of these, so basically just the usual gummies from a flight controller, and the idea is you attach the gummy directly to the frame and then run your stack screw straight through and up, and of course the idea of that is it will reduce some of the vibration going up into your flight controller. Having said that, given most flight controllers these days already have built-in gummies, I'm not so sure I'd even bother, and if I could, I'd simply stick a washer or something like that in there, and then attach my stack onto there. But again, it's sort of nice that they're thinking about these. Top plate, the only part I don't like about it, and it's more of a personal thing than a criticism on the frame, is this camera mount, which I kind of think ruins almost the prettiness of the frame. Gives it sort of almost like a dragon nose or a pointed nose. And if you see, it attaches basically into some cutouts in the bottom of the frame which don't go completely through the carbon. Having said that, it does seem to fit in really nicely, and when it's pressed into place and held together, it feels really sturdy. And this frame, of course, is made for a micro camera. So essentially, if I get one, if you're running sort of 25 degrees, you get a ton of camera protection. And even if you go up to sort of crazy racer levels, sort of 50 degrees or so, you're still going to get pretty much full camera protection. And again, quite a lot on the bottom because we've got this brace. So all in all, I think it's a really nicely designed frame. Everything is really, really well cut. The arms are chamfered. The carbon itself seems okay. The only thing that makes me slightly nervous is how rigid these arms are, and whether they'll simply crack as opposed to bend in a hard crash. But it certainly seems to be a really good frame for essentially 40 quid or whatever it retails at the moment. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with it. To say this is the sort of cheapest frame I've built recently for some time. The cut and finish is excellent. Everything clips into place just so, he says as he struggles to get the camera mount in. Yeah, everything screws into place just so, and it feels really, really well put together. And the fact that you can build it upside down, and it comes with, if you're doing that, you can also have the arms on the reverse because it comes with an additional 4 longer standoffs, the same length as these ones. Excuse me, it's always a finicky bit when you mess around with the camera. The other thing that you could do is, because we've got these front standoffs, you could just basically use a 3D printed camera mount like so, and sort of sit it back. So yeah, hi, this is Ross from the future, and I'm just starting to play around with this build, and I did find my KISS V2. One thing I forgot to mention when I initially reviewed this frame is, if you notice at the back, you've got 30mm mounting points and 20x20. So if you wanted to run a super low stack and change obviously these standoffs, you could do so by mounting your flight control, and it'd have to be a KISS sort of style flight control that comes in the middle. But you can mount your flight control at the back and your ESC up front, or of course just a normal 20x20 flight controller. Basically remove these standoffs and just run your camera really, really low, which would give a super flat build. So I'm not going to do that now, but it's something to think about in the future, and I like frames that allow you to play around beyond the way that they're sort of designed to be made. So you could literally run this guy sort of paper thin, and you'd have to be clever with the way that you mounted your camera. So you'd probably have to possibly cut a little bit out the top plate here, but yeah, could be an interesting little project. So yeah, I'm really chuffed with this. It comes with a fair bit of other stuff as well. So you get this nice box, and inside you get a couple of metal buckle Lipo straps, and I've used these before. They're pretty good quality. I wish they'd stop making them in this disgusting colour though. Get a GoPro mount thinner strap. There's the additional standoffs I spoke about. Get the instructions, some stickers, and also basically the hardware and gummies for your stack. Zip ties, a couple of Allen keys, and foam arm protectors. And you also get a couple of battery pads. Nice that they give you two. So yeah, I think for the money it's a really nice little frame. And as I said, because it reminds me of the SX218, which is a frame that I love and flies so well, that what I wanted to do is make this into another KISS setup, and I thought I had another KISS V2 flight controller. However, it appears that I have not, which has annoyed me. And my plan was to build this with KISS V2, and instead of using the Wolf PDB like I did last time, I was going to use the TBS, the new TBS VTX with its OSD, the Evo. So it's kind of paid to my idea, that, which is annoying. So I'm going to have a look around and see if I can find it anywhere, but otherwise I've made a mistake and I'll have to do something else, or possibly order another flight controller. The other thing I will do is replace the gold with normal hardware, not because there's anything wrong with these bolts. They are decent quality, 12.9 I think, but just because I hate the gold. We've got silver standoffs, so I'd prefer to have silver bolts. But yeah, that's the Geprc Mark IV. Looks like it would be a pretty easy build. Everything is nicely spaced, kind of where you'd want it. If I get this camera roughly into place, you can see that there's plenty of space up front for a buzzer or anything else that you want, and obviously plenty of space on the underside of this. Check it out if you want a slim, slender frame. In terms of weight, if I get the bolts in, so all up with all the bits, it comes in 105 grams. So really, really light actually for a freestyle frame. And it appears to be pretty strong as well, so pretty impressive. Obviously that's not including the stack hardware. The only thing that it doesn't come with is a 3D printed mount, but Mark, the guy who's designed this sort of captain's chair mount for the SX 218, is going to modify it to fit this guy. So with that in place, it should be good to go. So there you go, check it out. I'll put a link below if you're interested. And as always, happy flying. Cheers guys, thanks, bye bye. If you watched my last video, really irritated me. This is my ichabod, and as you can see, I've got rid of the top section. I've been flying it with essentially 10mm stack height, with a little Radex Lee or Lie 20x20 flight controller, and the Airbot Airports furling ESC. And I haven't put a huge amount of packs through this, but it's flying beautifully. However, this frame is designed for obviously cinematic stuff, hence the reason the GoPro mount is at the front, albeit it should be attached here, and I've just bodged mine and sat it higher so I don't constantly knock this mount when I land. But when I was flying this and filming the rapid fire review the other day, you will see on the video I hit literally a twig, and this happened. And the reason this has happened is the ichabod has these cutouts under the arms, and you can essentially use these cutouts to attach prop guards. But what's happened, if you can see, is it's literally fractured here, and obviously split the carbon all the way down. And this was literally just hitting a twig, maybe 7mm, a centimetre, not even particularly fast either. So I've got to say, if you're looking at Shendrones, carbon A isn't particularly good, and I've found that on the squirts as well. But that is a pretty bad design flaw. In fact, off topic, all the Shendrones frames, and they work beautifully for what their purpose is, but the squirt, the nutmeg and the ichabod, I don't feel like any of them are particularly finished products. They all smell of prototypes. This frame flies beautifully, but it's full of design issues. So we've got these huge fat arms with crap carbon, and they're attached to the frame here, but you'll notice that they don't run into the actual body itself. So even if it hadn't a crack there, this slender section here would have just broken off. And the mounts that are designed for these frames by Andy Shen, pretty poor designs. This one, as you can see, is just held on by a couple of bolts, but really it needs additional support because it has a tendency to come loose in a crash. And that's the same with the Squirt V2 as well. If you go for the adjustable angle GoPro mount, it has a habit of flopping over because you can't get enough purchase and tighten it up enough. And this is kind of, if anybody's interested in these frames, this is a really, really good flying frame. But I've had 0 crashes with this, and as I said, it's already gone. I've witnessed the Squirt V2 break in pretty much similar circumstances, and the nutmeg seems fairly sturdy. But yeah, definitely something to consider if you do go to the effort of getting a frame from America like I did with this one, although you can get them in Europe, make sure if you're buying from Shendrones, you buy a ton of spares, because as I found with this guy, you can't buy spare arms anywhere in Europe, and it would cost me an absolute fortune to get a replacement from Shendrones, sadly. So what I'm going to do with this guy is basically just take this arm off, epoxy it, brace it in a vise together, and then it should be absolutely fine. And then what I might do is basically just put some epoxy around these mounts to strengthen it up, and essentially just put some CA glue along this arm, which, as you can see, I've only just noticed this now, actually this arm is also, look at that, this frame has had no crashes, it's just completely fractured. Yeah, so there you go. Andy Shen might design very interesting cinematic products, but I really wish somebody like Hyperlaw, who knew how to make a frame and build it out of decent carbon,